Hello my lovelies and welcome back to the channel. Today we are going through my quarter 2 reads in my reading journal. First we're starting off with Cross. It is the second book in Ali Conde's series Matched. This is actually the third time I'm doing this. I've just decided to slow down and just take my time with the voiceover because I'm doing it a new way. But what have ye. So the first thing I did was mark in my calendar where I track how many days I've read and what I've read on those days. And so I've just filled in with crossed from the 1st of May to the 8th. And now we're starting on its page where I usually try and do the titles very similar to what's on the books themselves. So I tried my hand at replicating the font on the front of the book with the backwards R and everything. It's all wibbly wobbly, and truly at the time I cared a little bit, but right now I don't. I'm going in and setting up those borders. I'm using 2 different shades of blue for my borders, and I will leave those down in the description. So Crossed, like I said, is the second book in the Match series, and it is truly the peak, kind of, or it's the okay. As I'm recording this, I am about 300 pages into Reached, with the last book in the trilogy, and it's truly something. Like, it really is. But I think Crossed is like, I've never been on a roller coaster, but it's the only thing from what people are talking about or have talked about is when you are being pulled up the track by the roller coaster and you're just about to reach the top, or like when the cart reaches the very top and you have those couple seconds of where you're stopped at the top and just before it dives off the other side. This is Crossed, okay? Because Reached is what's on the other side. In Crossed, it's continuing immediately after Matched. So there is probably like a day or two, maybe even a week between as a time jump between the ending of Matched and the beginning of Cross. So you don't miss much. You're not jumping off into the deep end or anything with the second book. You're immediately following the same characters, same storyline, and you're continuing this plot. So in Crossed, I do believe you find out a lot, like, because Match gives you a lot of questions, or at least it gave me a lot of questions. And in Crossed, some of those questions get answered, but not fully, and because of that, they give you more questions. But either way, in Crossed, you get a bunch of, well, as usual, you get point of views. And I should preference before I forget, I will not in the voiceover spoil anything. I will try my hardest to not spoil anything. However, what I journal, I'm referencing very key points in the stories to make my journaling entry, right? So if you don't want spoilers, don't read what I'm writing if you can. Okay? So in Cross we meet 4 more prominent characters. I think it's 4. I could be wrong. As Cassia, Xander, and Kai are now all separated, and Cassia is trying to get to Kai. Kai is out doing stuff, and Xander is still back wherever it is that they left. I think it's Aurea is their home province, but I think I'm not 100% sure if at the end of Matched Xander gets moved to Central, because I think in the beginning of Cross he gets moved to Central because Cross is mostly focused on Cassie and Kai. We don't really touch on Xander in Crossed. But yes, so they go on a what I like to lovingly call an adventure of a lifetime, because truly these people go through so much. At one point, the poem that is referenced a lot that Cassie's grandfather tells her, somewhere along those lines, "Do not go gentle into that good night" by Dylan Thomas. I haven't read it. I kind of want to, but it's a poem that is repeatedly referenced in this story, and it holds a lot of emotion or connections for Cassia and her family. And it is one, it's sort of become like a mantra that she says to herself, some of the lines that she remembers to just keep going. It's a right mess, and this is the last of it, but I do pull a quote from one of the characters that we meet called Hunter, who they met in the canyons when they ran away from their stations at the villages that the society sent them off to when they were being separated. I don't remember the word that they used, but they're basically punted out of their regular lives because they went against the society, but they found something they weren't supposed to. And Hunter drops this line that truly, honestly, in the context is a banger of a line. And it's, they killed us to store themselves. And if you remember from Matched, the society collects tissue samples from the dying. That's what the citizens know, is that when you're on your last day, your last banquet, your final banquet, whatever the heck they call it, the society collects a tissue sample from you that your family holds on to and then delivers to a medical place for them to store it, so that eventually when the society figures out how to stop death or to become immortal or to reanimate the dead or to bring back the dead, whatever the heck their end goal is bibbity bonkers, they use those samples to bring back the dead person. But Cassia, Hunter, and a couple other characters have found a place that they're not supposed to find, created by the society, and they realize that it stores these things, and they come to the realization that the society lied to them, which we all knew from the first book. If you didn't put it together, then I'm sorry. But that's how that cookie crumbled, unfortunately. And Hunter drops, they killed us to store themselves, because Hunter is a part of a group called the Farmers, which is like a part of the trifecta of groups in the Matched universe, where the society is the all benevolent good or whatever. If you had to put like them into their trifecta sections, society is deeming as good, the enemy is bad, the rising and the farmers are the neutrals, leading either towards chaotic good or chaotic evil, whatever. That's how my brain understood it, at least. And so Hunter is a part of the farmers who are leaving the area that Cassia and the other characters come upon. It was their end goal, but when they find out nobody's there, they try to move on and get to the rising, which is their end goal now. That line I had to write down because it truly did just sum up that whole emotion, that whole set of chapters, all those thoughts that those characters were having. And it makes you think, like, what is the society? Who is the society? Why is the society? Like, what is their end goal? Because it truly doesn't seem like it's, at least to me, it doesn't seem like their end goal is anything beneficial to the people that they claim to protect. And that's pretty messed up. On to scoring. I gave Cross 4 stars. It got 8 on the Cop-Out scale for me. Exactly 8, which is wild. I didn't know my math could work like that. Which for my Cop-Out scale, yeah, gives it 4 stars. I think it's in between. Yeah, it's in my 7.5 and 8.9 section. I don't know what it's called. Range. And it gets 4 stars from me. A thought that I had just now popped in while I was reviewing the voiceover. I'm pretty sure that's technically a spoiler, but it's also like, you kind of needed to know why I wrote that quote down, like the context behind it. So, sorry if it's actually a spoiler or not. I don't think it is, because it's such a fleeting thing in that like bit. To me, it was pretty big because it's sort of one of those things where it's like, oh, this is confirming some of the thoughts that I've had about the society and some of my suspicions about them. So I'm not even sure if it would count as a spoiler or not. But if it is, I'm sorry. Now on to the second and last book of the month, House of Earth and Blood by Sarah J. Maas from the Crescent City series. This, I'm so glad I picked up this series. I only picked up the first two books because at the time that was all I had enough for. But let me tell you, I'm so glad I listened to my gut about going into the bookstore that day. I'm so glad I did not ignore the little urge in my body to turn around and look at the shelf that these were on, because I have just introduced myself into a series that I truly adore. This is the first book to, I'm pretty sure, ever make me cry from a character. And that's saying a lot because I've read quite a bit. But this book is the last book of the month because it's so long. It took me literally, let me count for you right about now because I'm pretty sure I didn't record myself updating my calendar. It took me from the 9th of May to the 25th of May to finish this book. This book is like, I think is literally 800 plus pages. It doesn't hit 900, I know that for a fact, but it is a little bit more than 800. And I wrote basically an essay on this book because it is so good and there's so much to gain from it, so much to learn and understand and feel from it. So, House of Earth and Blood, as I said, is the first book in the Crescent City series by Sarah J. Maas, and it is sort of like, the way that I understood it from how it was explained, it's like if Greek mythology, ancient Greek mythology, met modern times, but you also still lived in like a D&D world where like there's magic and supernatural beings and stuff like that. But I don't think I recorded much for this because I wrote so much. It's about our main character, Bryce Quinlan, I believe is her last name, and she is friends with Danica Fenris friend. I don't know how to say her last name properly, but Danica is a werewolf shifter, so you can understand the last name. Bryce is half human, half fae, and she gets a lot of crap for it, but because people are just for some reason inherently racist or whatever, I don't understand, but because what they call her is a half-breed, which I don't understand why it's an insult, because that's literally what she is. It's like, I don't know why there's a negative connotation behind it when that's just literally what she is, right? It's like calling a spoon. That's what it is. It's a spoon, right? She's literally half human, half fae. That's what she is. But okay, get up in arms about it, I guess. Jeez. So people look down on her for that, but the thing about Bryce is she doesn't give a shit. That's why I love her. Bryce is like my favorite main character, and she's just like, I don't care what you have to say to me. I'm gonna live my life how I want to live my life. Your opinions be damned, because your opinions don't matter to me. You're not important to me. So it's like, Bryce is a badass. I'm gonna just put that out there. Bryce is number one badass for me from this book, simply because she's unapologetically herself. A lot happens, and I don't think I can fit it all into this voiceover because without spoiling as well, which is so hard. But so many things happen. There's so many little nuances to the daily lives, so many things. Essentially, the premise of the book is Bryce and Danica are involved in something. Danica doesn't tell Bryce about it because she's trying to protect Bryce. But then I think literally in like the first chapter, so I don't think this is a spoiler, Danica dies and Bryce thinks it's her fault, when in all actuality is not. But Bryce then goes through, I think it's 1 or 2 years of a depressive slump. It doesn't look like a depressive slump to people outside. They just think she's like a party girl who just carried on and isn't affected by Danica, even though Danica was literally like her sister in all but blood. And so Bryce is now being, I want to say, commissioned by the big governor of their city to figure out what happened to Danica because of the very concerning things that were caught on the security cameras and all of that. and it leads to the cracking open of the biggest egg known to mankind, I feel like, because it's all just a freaking mess. But it's done so well. It's done so well. I can see why people like Sarah J. Maas as a writer. I can see it. And I want to get her other series, and I want to complete this one and finish it. But I digress. So she's commissioned by the big man, Governor Micah, to figure out who murdered Danica, because it turns out that the same thing or person that murdered Danica murdered somebody that Bryce literally spoke to the night before. So it's like painting suspicion on her that she's connected to it all and everything. But so she gets commissioned to figure out the murder for some reason. I don't know why they wanted her to do it, but I guess it's because she's connected to it. So maybe because of her actual connection to the crimes, it'll like bring the killer out. I still don't understand why, even after all this time. But she's also partnered with an angel called Hunt, who is like Micah, the big governor man. He's like Micah's like assassin sort of situation. Like Hunt is Micah's slave, literally, because of a rebellion that happened, and he was captured, and now he's enslaved to pay off those years, like to pay back the lives that he took in the rebellion by killing more people, but only the ones that Micah says he should. It's weird. It's a weird thing. I never understood it. And from the beginning, I never liked Micah. And there's a damn good reason. You'll find out if you read it yourself. But it's going on to be, there's a lot of characters that I truly didn't like in this book. I say a lot. I'm pretty sure it's literally only Micah and Danica's mother, because Danica's mother is a piece of work, truly a piece of work, because everything out of her mouth about Danica is negative, is bad. She can never say one good thing about her own daughter, all because she's jealous that her father, Danica's grandfather, gave Danica the blessing basically to become the next head of their pack or whatever, instead of his daughter, Danica's mother, who technically should be getting it because she's next in line. But because Danica just proves to be a better person, the grandfather was like, no, not you, her. So yeah. And oh boy, there's a lot going on. The pack I don't like because they denied Bryce from coming to Danica's. The way that I envision it is like a Viking funeral. That's not really what it is, because they don't burn the boat. They just send her boat off, sort of like the river Styx, where you send the boat off with the body, and the king of that realm deems if their soul goes on to their afterlife or is stuck in the hells to pay back whatever the heck. And they denied Bryce being able to attend that, which is fucked up. I'm gonna just say it right here right now, it's fucked up, because the pack thinks that Danica died because of Bryce, which isn't true. I'm gonna tell you right now, it's not true, but the pack is stupid, so we're just not gonna address stupidity, right? Because we're gonna end up being like them, okay? We're gonna move on. So I don't like the pack. I don't like Micah. He's a different story. If you read the book, you'll find out, because why I don't like him is a massive spoiler. But here we're just gonna jump ahead. Here I'm doing the reason why I cried in this book, and it is because of Lehaba, who is a fire sprite and one of Bryce's best friends and technically co-worker. She's like a watcher of the books, because apparently the books have a mind of their own in this antiquities place. The books are technically illegal, I think, is what I gleaned. I truly don't understand if they are or not, but Lahaba guards these books and like puts them in their place and whatever the heck. But because of Micah, Lahaba commits the ultimate sacrifice to get Bryce to safety. And turns out that everybody who was at the summit, which is one of these big events that was actually being led to plot-wise in the book, everybody at the summit saw what happened. And the 33rd is basically the police force, right? And what was left of the 33rd after they witnessed Lahaba's sacrifice stood and saluted her. And when I tell you, I burst into tears. When I read that, I was like, because all of these people are from groups that don't look well upon fire sprites or people like Bryce or people like that, right? And for them to give her the ultimate form of respect in her last minutes, oh my god, it was just beautifully written. Lahaba is my favorite character. She's there, she's up there, she's my top three. One is Bryce, obviously, and two is Hunt, because Hunt, really. And yeah, Lahaba. And it's oh wow, it's a lot. When I tell you that this book truly transports you into this world where it feels like you are not just a bystander, you are actually a person in this world, living with these people, feeling these things alongside them, and simply going on this journey with them. Props to Sarah J. Maas. Truly props to her for writing such an amazing book. And what an introduction to the series. What the hell? What an introduction. Anyways, Big Bad does his thing and shit gets real. Bryce saves the day being her badass selves and all is well in the world. Haha, lol, not, but it's the end of the book, so what can we do? So at one point, it's gotten to, okay, before I get to it, because I don't think I'm actually getting to it anytime soon, I'm going to talk about some of the relationships that I wrote down. So I was talking about the relationship between Bryce, Danica, Fury, and Juniper, they're the quad group. Fury is an assassin, not really an assassin, but like anybody can hire her, like a hand for hire, I think is what she technically is. And Juniper is a fawn ballerina, I'm pretty sure is what she is. But they are best friends, but when Danica dies, Fury and Juniper frick off to the ether or something. They just leave her hanging, which is so fucked up. And then I was talking about the relationship between Bryce and Hunt. Bryce and Hunt are the romantic interests. So Bryce is our main female character protagonist. Then Hunt is our male protagonist, and they are the romantic interests. So they have a little bit going on with each other. And then I was talking about Bryce and Lahaba, who led it into the big old emotional splurge. And then Bryce and Rune, who is Bryce's cousin turned brother. It's in the story. You'll figure it out. And that was a bunch of stuff that was going on there. And it took me a while. I do love the end of the book where Bryce and Hunt finally like solidified their relationship. And I wrote the quote, I don't think I show it in the video, but I wrote the quote, "Did you just call me a fucking coward? So what if I did?" And that's Bryce to Hunt after completing the drop. And the drop is when basically they essentially commit to immortality or something like that. And Bryce does it at the very end of the book and truly proves everybody wrong about her, and it's amazing. It's truly brilliant. I gave House of Earth and Blood, let's see, I have to flip back so many pages. I gave House of Earth and Blood 4.5 stars. On my Coppa scale, it gave me 9.4, and I truly wish I gave it just 5 stars just because of how much I loved it, but I needed to stick to my guns. I needed to stick to my convictions and just keep it going, you know, keep it true to how I felt and not like fudge the numbers, if you will. Starting with the first book that I read in June being A Shadow, Bright and Burning by Jessica Clues. It's the first book in the Kingdom of Fire series. I didn't even know this was a series until I was looking up the book covers. I've had this book for years now, I think, because I'm pretty sure this book is I think it got published in 2017. I could be very wrong though. It's a very good book. I would like to preface before I start into this voiceover section, this is the next day, IRL, and as I was listening back to yesterday's edit for A House of Earth and Blood, I realized I was swearing a lot. It happens when I'm passionate and dependent on the audience. So because I'm by myself, just talking to my monitor, and I'm very passionate about A House of Earth and Blood, I felt strongly about a lot of the characters and the plot points. Anyways, I do apologize if that makes you uncomfortable, but I've never once said that my channel is family friendly, and I don't think it ever will be, because I am 25 years old and I will not cater to anybody younger than 18. So I'm sorry. But seeing as we are here for A Shadow Bright and Burning, I will continue for that one. So A Shadow Bright and Burning, I was very confused as to why I picked it up, but then I remembered how I pick up books is based on the covers, and it's usually by color. Like if there's a lot of colors that attract my attention, I'm more than likely going to be interested in at least knowing about the book. And I think that's what happened with this one. Like the title was obviously like a thought jerker as well, but the cover for sure was what got me to pick up the book in the first place, because I was very curious as to why the name of it is A Shadow Bright and Burning, but there's fire on the front of it. So like, and I was like, is fire a very pertinent thing? Yes it is. So A Shadow Bright and Burning is set in some time of England. I want to say, well, okay, they reference the witch burnings, but they reference them as like history. So it's, but not far history. It's more like a couple decades history, if that makes sense. Like present time is a couple decades after the witch burnings. So the world is filled with magical people. I think, from what I understood, a lot of people can do magic, but not everybody can do magic. And then it's also like, there is time accurate misogyny. Just saying, like women are seen as less than in this book, but then our main female protagonist, Henrietta, is like, okay, I will use that to my advantage. We love when people use other people underestimating their abilities to do something to come out on top. It's pretty good. It's a pretty nice trope that I like. So back to it all. The world is of magic. A lot of people have magic, but not everybody has magic. Women who have magic are witches, and it is illegal for them to have magic. So they're usually like either punished in some way, either by being imprisoned or dying, I think. So a lot of them hide their magic in order to survive. And then the men who have magic, it depends on what kind of magic you have, or like what kind, how you use your magic. So there's magicians who are the tricksters. They are, let's call them the bottom of the totem pole for male magic users. And then there's the sorcerers, who are the top of the totem pole for male magic users. And then you've got Henrietta, who, according to the blurb on the back of the book, Henrietta is the prophecy girl, but not really, because the sorcerers are they're so cocky and arrogant that they misinterpreted the prophecy and don't realize that the prophecy doesn't mean a sorcerer girl. It means a girl born of sorcerer blood, which is very different. I'm gonna tell you that. It's very different. Of sorcerer blood means her parents were sorcerers. And when she was born, she also has magic. So they misinterpreted that very badly, but it all comes out in the end because Henrietta saves them all by being herself. But it's a bit, it makes you go, common sense really ain't that common anymore. A lot when I read it, at least, because Henrietta is, I truly think just Henrietta is a different kind of magic user altogether, because she's not like the sorcerers, she's not like the magicians, she's not like the witches, at least from what I could understand. I think she has very different magic to everybody mentioned. And that's what makes her unique, or that's what makes her the prophecy child, or whatever. That's what makes her the key to saving the world, essentially. Now, the reason why they need to save the world, kind of, or really, I think they only need to save England, but it seems like a worldwide catastrophe because of how big this event is. There are these massive magical entities called the Ancients. So, like, they're just these big powers from a different dimension, like an alternate dimension, that were summoned to current dimension by a witch. That's kind of why witches are ostracized so much, is because this one witch got real heavy with the magic and summoned these very destructive, massive magic wells of power that became these. Well, I'm not 100% sure on how they came to be. Like, if these entities were like predetermined entities, if like they already existed, or if the calling of them to this side turned them into these, gave them physical forms. But from how it's told in the book, I think they already had the physical forms, and the witch doing the ritual just gave them a doorway into this reality, if that makes sense. I kind of confused myself there, but I think it worked out. So Henrietta is the prophecy child, quote unquote, and she gets taught by this sorcerer who at first you think is like so sweet, just wants the best for her, just wants to save England, and then turns out he's just human, but also like it's just very strange. It's again very time accurate misogyny where like the men think they have to save the women from themselves because the women want to do something only men can do, quote unquote. And it's like, boss man, she can literally light you on fire and burn you to a crisp, and you're gonna stand there and dehumanize her? You're lucky she has a good soul, because if it was me, you would not exist anymore. Not just for my sake, but for any other femme you walk past. Simply having the chutzpah to say that to a person's face is unreal. You truly don't understand her if you're saying that to her, is basically what I'm getting at. But Blackwood has to be probably one of the well-developed characters besides Henrietta and Brooke, Henrietta's friend, who is ancient touched, which is a whole thing. Like, he's got powers as well, but like it's one of those things where it's like, does he have powers or does the powers have him? Do you know what I mean? It's sort of like that. But Blackwood is, he comes around. At first he doesn't like Henrietta, but by the middle, maybe he comes around, and this quote that I've written here, "We need you, that's what's important, the rest of the titles," is a very big moment of character development, I think, for Blackwood. And it's just the story, I feel like you have to like read it yourself to understand what the heck is going on. And I did write a lot more than what you saw me right here. I did write like two more spread, or like one more spread of journaling, and it's like it's a kerfuffle. There's so much going on in this that it's kind of wild how much they can fit in such a small book. To me, at least, they fit so much. Like, you get the whole arc, you get the whole like discovering her, she goes to school, trains, not necessarily school, but like she goes and trains, harnesses her powers, she gets found out, and then it turns out it doesn't matter if she gets found out because she's gonna save you anyways. And then at the end, they're all just like, okay, now what? And then they realize, oh, there's more that we need to do. So for A Shadow Bright and Burning, I gave it 4.25 stars. It got an 8.1 on my Copile scale, which in my scaling gives it 8.1. It was pretty good. I do kind of want to get the second book. I don't remember what it's called, but I want to get the second book. Before I start this section of the voiceover, I need to preface that I did not record a majority of the journaling in this because it did take me quite a while. I had to like properly focus to get stuff done. There's a lot of time in between, but here we are with Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children by Ransom Higgs. It's the first of the book of the series that I didn't know was a series because when I picked up the first book, the sequel had just dropped. So since then, I'm pretty sure the series is actually finished. There's like, I think either 6 or 8 books in this series. It's wild. I only have the first 2. I count it as a psychological horror, but I don't think it's a psychological horror. I think it's just a horror mystery, to be honest. But it's basically about time loops, people who protect the time loops, and the peculiar children in these time loops. Okay? Stick with me now. It is very hard, I'm gonna tell you this straight up, it is very hard to do a voiceover about this book without spoiling the book. So if I do a spoiler, I'm sorry, but you kind of need context. So Jacob is our main character. He and his grandfather bonded over stories of his grandfather's childhood, where he, as a Polish immigrant from World War II, I think it is, he immigrated to England and got picked up by Miss Peregrine and stayed at her home for peculiar children. These peculiar children are essentially the people you think of when you think of like an old-timey circus. So like the contortionist, the girl who can float, or like the boy who's a living beehive, the invisible boy, the young girl who can lift like 40 times her weight or something like that. And it's all just this fantastical journey, right? Jacob starts off believing these stories. He's loving these stories. He's feeling a connection with his grandfather. And then as the years goes on and Jacob tells these stories to people around him, he essentially gets bullied and teased for it at school, so he no longer believes in them and just calls them fairy tales. But then later on, his grandfather calls him at work and is like, he's asking for his gun to save himself from these monsters. But the family think that the grandfather is like slowly losing his mind, and he's turned like his childhood stories were used as a way to like protect himself from the horrors of being in a war. But the family don't believe that they're actually real. And then Jacob finds out that they're actually real because he sees the monster that his grandfather is talking about and goes to tell Miss Peregrine all that's been happening. But in order to find her, he has to go through a whole ordeal. He's picked up by a therapist who's apparently important in the story, and then eventually convinces his dad to take him to the island where Miss Peregrine's home is on, only to discover that the home is in a time loop that Miss Peregrine protects, and there are others like it, and they have to save the timeline continuum, and Jacob has to choose between going back to present time and living with that, or staying in 1940 and helping the children and Miss Peregrine and the other bird timekeepers save the timeline. And it's a doozy. I'm pretty sure this is a Netflix show, and I kind of want to watch it because the book is wild. So if the show does anything, I want to see it. But this that I'm pasting in right here is a hologas, which is one of the monsters that Jacob sees that his grandfather was trying to kill. These are the things that are controlled by defected bird timekeepers, I think, or are they defected peculiar children? I can't remember at this rate. Somebody defected and is on the bad side and is trying to become immortal because of the time stuff. But the last time they did that, they literally wiped a part of Siberia off the map. So like they're trying to stop them from doing that because the next time they do it, they could literally end the world, right? That's what they're trying to do. It's massive, okay? And I'm pretty sure all of that was a spoiler, but that's the only way for you to know how intense this book is, because it's intense. And I want to know what the second book has in store, and I think I'm gonna read it next, but I couldn't tell you. I'm up in arms about everything right now. Anyways, Oh, geez, Louise. That took a lot of energy. But I basically give you all of it. The one thing I want to say about this, right? There is a relationship in this that I'm iffy about because they're stuck in a time loop, right? In 1940. So the people in that time loop don't age. The people outside of it do. If you from the time loop leave said time loop, you will immediately age to however old you're supposed to be because of all the time, right? And perish. You will full on fall over and die, right? But in this time loop, there is a girl that Jacob's father had some sort of relationship with. I'm unsure. So when Jacob's grandfather, when he left to go to America to fight in the war, and she was basically like a love interest. But then when Jacob goes, she finds interest in him, and then they build a relationship. And I was like, that's kind of weird. That's the one weird thing that I didn't like about this. But I mean, if that's what you want to do, man, that's what you want to do. I can't stop you. You're in 1940 and I'm in 2025. That's it, man. I can't do anything else. I gave I'm feeling it. I gave Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children 4 stars. So on my cop-out scale, it got a 7.57 rating. Okay, coming at you a good week, maybe a week and a half in the future now, because things get in the way. We are now looking at my entry for A School for Good and Evil. The entire time that I've had this series, I thought it was a school of good and evil. It's for good and evil, because it's teaching the children to be villains or princesses and princes. It's a weird, this one's a weird one. The first time I read it, I even made the note here, because this is a reread. The first time I read it, I don't think I was as critical of the characters as I was now as a grown adult. I think. Would I be an adult? I don't know. Anyways. But the first thing I have to say, it is definitely written for a younger audience, like not middle school, like between the ages of like 12 and 15. I think would be like peak audience for this book. And geez Louise. Okay. I'm just gonna go get into like character analysis and what have you. The first time I read this book, like I said, I don't think I was as critical of the characters as I was reading it this time. Because let me tell you, a lot of my tabs in my book were for Agatha. No, not for Agatha. For Sophie. Because Sophie is annoying. Annoying in the sense of like she's so delusionally entitled. It's just like, and I get it. But when you read it, actually, I should say, when you read it, you kind of forget that they're 12, because the type of behavior that Sophie shows is just, it makes you think of an entitled teenager, not a 12-year-old child, right? It makes you think of that one rich kid in the movies, or not even the rich kid, the one popular girl in the movies who gets shown up by the new girl who isn't like, who doesn't fit the quote unquote pretty standards that have been determined by the popular pretty girl or whatever, and then popular pretty girl gets one up and has like that temper tantrum that shows people who she truly is and whatever. It's like that. Sophie, I get it. Like, I get that she is 12, but I have never met a 12-year-old as self-centered as Sophie. I'm just saying. Sophie is, the whole point of this book is that, the whole premise basically is that there is a school for good and evil that is run by this headmaster. I think they just call him the headmaster, I think. From the very beginning, Sophie and Agatha's relationship is a good deed, and that's with a capital G and D, by Sophie, meaning that Sophie is only friends with Agatha to make herself look good, so that she gets put into the good school when they get taken. However, Agatha doesn't believe in the fairy tales. She doesn't believe that if Sophie was to get taken, she would be going to the school that she wants to go to. She thinks that she'd be getting kidnapped and like possibly, quite frankly, murdered in the woods surrounding their village. But turns out it was all a work in fate or whatever, that Agatha followed her or tried to save her from being taken to the school, only for them to get put into opposite schools. So the whole thing, Sophie has this thing where Agatha is the witch to her princess. And then it turns out that they're being put in opposite schools because all of Sophie's actions were very selfish. They were only to benefit herself and not anybody else. While Agatha genuinely just existed. Like, she didn't do anything for the benefit of herself or other people. She was just there. Right? And Agatha is pretty honest. She's not afraid to speak her mind. But when it comes to her and Sophie, I feel like she has dedicated a lot of her life to making Sophie happy just to keep her one and only friend. And it's kind of sad when you think about it, when you see and you notice these actions or these habits that Agatha has developed from being Sophie's friend. Because the entire time that they're at the school, Agatha is trying to get them out of it, trying to get them back home. And all Sophie cares about is her prince. Her prince who does not care about her. This prince who is honestly a toad. To be honest with you, the prince is the son of King Arthur from the Arthurian legends. And he is a piece of work, just like Sophie is, and quite frankly, they deserve each other. But that's not what happens. If you've watched the series, I'm pretty sure the Netflix series is like a pretty solid adaptation of the book. I haven't seen it. To be honest with you, I don't even know if it's a series or if it's a movie. But I'm pretty sure, based on what I've seen, it's a pretty close adaptation of the book. So if you've already seen the show or you've already read the book, this isn't a spoiler. This book has been out for years, eons at this point. So the School of Good is the princesses, the princes, and then also the companions of the prince and princesses, the horses, the mice, the birds. If you go to the School of Good, there is not a very high chance that you will become a princess or a prince. You could end up becoming one of the animals or a horse or something. And it's the same thing in Evil, where you might not become a witch or a troll or the villain of the story. You might become the dragon that is slain by a prince, or you might become, I don't know, you're not always guaranteed to become a human-esque character in these stories, which is also pretty messed up, because this whole thing is spouted about becoming a prince or becoming a princess or becoming a witch. And so it's all drawn up to these things where Agatha and Sophie try their hardest to fail, but then they try their hardest to exceed so that they can get in contact with the schoolmaster to get themselves sent home. But then it turns out that their story has already started being written, which isn't a thing that happens while you're at school. Your story starts after you finish school, but theirs started while they were at school. So turns out this is their story while they're at this school. And one of the quotes that I've written down is from Sophie to the School of Evil and the School of Good. When they meet, it's basically like a war happens. Like, I call it a war, but it's like, because when you break it down into its simplified form, the School of Good versus the School of Evil, they literally come together and fight. These children are fighting all over the place. They're doing deadly damage to each other, and all because Sophie so desperately wanted to become good that she became the biggest form of evil. And so at the end, there's like a ball that's supposed to happen, I think. Something like that happens, where instead of Agatha dancing with Sophie's prince, Sophie dances with Agatha. And that Sophie asks the question to the students what happens when evil becomes good, and the evil students start to take on the good characteristics of like the pink dresses, the light hair, the good skin, whatever. And then what happens when good becomes evil, and then the same thing happens or the opposite happens to the good students, where they now wear black and they have got warts, they look like witches, they're raggedy, they're dragged down, they're it's all of that. And that becomes a big thing where it's like, and I think this point is like what happens when you just shift your perspective a little bit, because not everything is set in stone. The world is not black and white. It's not just good versus evil. There is a gray zone, and everyone has the potential to be in that gray zone. And whether you lean good or evil is up to you, not some book, not some schoolmaster that comes and takes you to be put into a book story to be told for the rest of life or until that story is forgotten, what have you. I overall really liked it. I have the second book waiting for me to read. And so I gave School for Good and Evil a 7.14 on my cop out scale, which translates to 3.5 stars. Last book I read in June is Liesl Po by Lauren Oliver. This, I think, was also a reread. I couldn't tell you, to be honest, because it reads familiarly. The story feels familiar, as in like I've seen it before, and not in a different way, but more of like at a different point in time I read this book. I'm pretty sure that's how familiar it felt. But Liesl Po this is a very good read as well. It's a proper mix of mystery and adventure and sort of coming of age, but also sort of like a intriguing, sort of challenging, as in like what goes on in the book, not the topics, but more like the things that the characters face. I tried my hand at a grayscale rendition. Well, it's not a rendition. Well, actually, it is a rendition because it's not the exact tree. I can't do point to point copying like that. But I tried my hand at grayscaling the willow tree that is the end goal of Liesl in this book. But let me start from the beginning. Liesl Po is about a young girl whose father's just died, and she has been sequestered or shoved away, hidden into the attic by her somewhat evil stepmother. Here's the trope. So that her stepmother can get her father's wealth. The stepmother believes that the father and Liesl's mother and father, were spending their money wrong, and that she deserves it because she'll spend it right. So Liesl is trapped quite literally in this attic for a good chunk of her life after her father dies, and she meets Po. Po is for lack of a better term, is a spirit from the other side, capital O, capital S, who accidentally came to the side of the living and just so happened to appear in Liesl's bedroom and became interested in her. There are two point of views, technically. You've got the point of view that follows Liesl Po, and then you've got the point of view that follows other character, Will, and his line of events. It's sort of reminding me of, the way that I have to explain this, it sort of reminded me of a series of unfortunate events for some reason, even though they're not in any way similar, I don't think. But I want to read those books again, actually. I read all of them and I watched the Netflix series, but I'm getting distracted. Oh my goodness. Anyways, back to Liesl Po. So we follow for the first couple of chapters. Well, I think it's actually flipping back and forth, but we follow Liesl and Po as Po tells Liesl about her father on the other side and how Po was explaining how the other side works, how it's like the afterlife, and how when you're there, you don't come back, and how it's dangerous to travel to the living side when you're already on the other side because you can forget who you are or something. I don't think that's what it is, but that's the vibe. But the longer you spend on the other side, you start to become one with the other side. It's like you start to stop being a single entity and start to blend with all the other entities of the other side, which how Poe explains it makes it sound absolute, like this is the end all be all, but later on you find out it's not. So without spoiling anything, I'm not going to go into that. But the mystery part of this is Poe delivers a message from Liesl's father, a single sentence that really gets the bell in your head ringing. Poe delivers to Liesl, I really shouldn't have eaten that soup, from her father. And Liesl figures it out, and you might figure it out before I even say it. But turns out, I mean, like you pick up on this pretty easily, like as soon as that's said, Liesl's father didn't die of natural causes. I think that's all I'm going to say on that. And so we're going to move to following Will. Will is the apprentice of a local alchemist who is truly just the grumpiest bastard. And it's just like, he's one of those people where if I had to work under him, I would be fired for a plethora of charges. Because to me, the alchemist is one of those people where it's like, you want all of these things to get done, but you're not putting in the time and the effort to make them get done, but you're also yelling at the person doing it to do it better when you haven't taught them how to do it the way that you want it done. Which also brings up the thing of, if you want it done right, do it yourself because you know how you want it to be done and you're not teaching the person who is under you how to do it. Does that make sense? The alchemist is that annoying person, for me at least. And so young Will has this leech attached to him in this case, and because of that he makes a really big mistake. The alchemist was hired by the Lady Premier to make the best magic he possibly could, which is apparently a magic that can bring back the dead or something. I never fully understood what kind of magic she wanted, but that's what she wanted him to make, apparently. But Will also had to pick up some ingredients from the mortician for the alchemist. But while he's there, his box of the magic gets mixed up with the box of ashes of Liesl's father's ashes. So it turns out that Liesl's stepmother gets the box of magic and the Lady Premier gets the box of ashes. That's what sparks the whole runtime of them needing to get back the magic, Liesl's escaping from the attic to deliver her father's ashes to his resting place, which is by the willow tree next to her mother, his wife. And it becomes a whole thing of like, she's traveling across the country by herself. An old woman puts her nose in her business and thinks she's insane and should be put in a place that helps people like that. And then we meet like the sweetest guard of all time, Mo, who's truly just wants to give Will a hat so his little ears don't get cold. And it builds up this whole thing, and they finally all meet after the magic gets stolen at some point and then abandoned, but then it's not really abandoned because the wind takes it or something like that, I think, and then actually does what it's supposed to do, which isn't bring back the dead. It brings back the sunshine and life to the area, because in order to make the magic, the alchemist took the sunshine from the world. So they're stuck in dreary old England weather, apparently, and it's just a mess. And at the end of it all, Liesl gets to say goodbye to her father because the stepmother wouldn't let her, which is messed up in its own way. And we learn more about Poe at the end. and then Liesl and Will get adopted by Mo. I think that's what happens. All I know is the other adults in the scene have literally no care for the children at the scene, and the only one who does is Mo. So it's my headcanon that he adopts them and takes care of them with his cat, whose name I forgot. This book I gave, on my cop-out scale, it got a 7.8, which for stars gave it a solid 4. Now on to my quarterly statistics. There are quite a bit here, so I'm going to try and fly through them as fast as I could. For genres, I have middle grade at 3, fantasy at 6, romance at 2, dystopian at 1, young adult at 4, children's at 1, and horror at 1. The number of pages I covered were 7 books, which is 2,939 pages, which is roughly 420 pages a book. Not quite right, because one of those books was like 800. Then we have my star ratings, which is actually kind of, I think, incorrect, because the 5-star is not supposed to be there. I don't remember what book would have given me that. I think I just recorded something incorrectly. But I have 1 book at 3.5, 3 books at 4.0, 1 book at 4.25, 1 book at 4.5, and 1 at 5.0, which, like I said, shouldn't be there, but I can't figure out why it's there. Then for the months read, in April I read 1 book, in May I read 2, and in June I read 4. That is it for this video. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye 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 bye.